Um, so good morning, everyone. And just for your information, this presentation is being recorded. Thank you for being here today. I am Vaishalli, a PhD candidate at the Policy School of Northeastern University, and I am pleased to present my dissertation titled Innovative Frameworks for Urban Water Security, Bridging Gaps in Planning, Management, and Governance. Before I begin the presentation, I would like to take a moment to express my gratitude to those who have supported me throughout this journey. First and foremost, this dissertation would not have been possible without the invaluable guidance and encouragement of all my advisors and committee members. I would also like to thank all the public officials, experts, friends, and family who supported me in this journey. Here is a quick overview of what I will be covering today. I will begin with an introduction, followed by the research questions, methodology, key findings and implications of the three papers, followed by conclusion. Thereafter, the floor will be open for Q&As. I started this research with inquiring how best to integrate sustainability and resilience agendas in the urban water supply systems. This led me to the development of a conceptual and indicator-based SURE framework. In the second paper, I employed system dynamics modeling to address security and sustainability of water supply in the case study city of Ahmedabad. The SURE framework guided the model development and policy analysis, while the insights from the policy modeling process also informed the indicators in the SURE framework. In the last inquiry, I applied social network analysis to analyze and map the urban water governance in the city. And improved governance can support better planning and management of urban water resources, thus trying to tie the whole research together. Let me begin with showing you the unique challenges and opportunities in the urban water sector, especially of Indian cities. Globally, about 32% of urban population lives in water-scarce regions. That is about 930 million people. And as you can see in this figure, India has the largest urban population struggling with perennial or seasonal water scarcity. This is over 200 million people. And with rapid urbanization and climate change, this number is only going to increase. Indian cities have a unique system of accessing water. This is very different than how water is supplied in the global north, like here in the US. The formal water supply provided by the urban local bodies consists of piped treated water, which is often drawn from surface water sources. But there also exists a parallel informal water system, which is decentralized and relies heavily on groundwater. Despite these urban issues and lived experiences in Indian cities being different than those in the global north, the current urban knowledge is primarily influenced by studies and theories from the global north. Therefore, the globally developed paradigms often fail and they do not capture the unique complexities faced by Indian cities. Moreover, urban water management in India remains insufficiently examined, presenting a significant opportunity to bridge this knowledge gap. So in my dissertation, I examined the complex relationships between sustainability, resilience, and governance in urban water supply systems in Indian cities. I conducted primary research, which included visits and fieldwork to two cities, namely Ahmedabad and Surat. Over a 3-month period in the peak summer and monsoon, I not only experienced the two extremes of water scarcity and floods, but I also visited local municipal offices, government institutions, libraries, and colleges to conduct archival research and interviews. This entire experience and the data informed the scope of my research and also guided the questions and the method selection. So the first and the foremost, I approached urban water supply systems through a theoretical lens. Sustainability and resilience are key goals in urban development, but they can conflict. So experts highlight the need to balance these goals through leveraging their synergies and managing the trade-off. In this paper, I explored how to integrate sustainability and resilience into urban water policy and planning. I began my research with extensive literature review and synthesized a conceptual framework. Using goal setting, backcasting, I operationalized it through an indicator-based assessment framework. Then I used systems thinking to analyze the potential synergies and conflicts between the goals. So this is the result. This is the conceptual framework, which distills the sustainability and resilience definitions for urban water supply system. And I identified systems thinking and adaptive governance as the key elements needed to bridge the two paradigms. In the next stage, I developed a 5-step process to operationalize the SURE framework into policy and planning. So the first step is to establish sustainability goals and translate them into actionable items. The second step involved threat analysis. And the third step involved identifying ways in which the city can respond to these threats. The city's response depends on their resilience pathways, and hence these two steps are interconnected, the third and the fourth. The fourth step focuses on defining the resilience pathway, which comes from the goals. And lastly, in the fifth step is to assess the conflict and synergy between the resilience and sustainability to avoid any conflicting benchmarks. In the last stage, I applied this SURE framework to Indian cities, and it resulted in translation of the goals into more applicable objectives using the India-specific literature and policies. These objectives were then subsequently decomposed into themes, dimensions, and indicators. The indicator and benchmark that I identified in this research are the most extensive and fill the gaps in literature, specifically regarding informal water system. Thereafter, I used systems thinking to identify potential for synergy and conflict. And here what you see, the figure is a causal loop diagram, also called CLD. It is a visual tool used to map out the feedback loops and causal relationships. Without going into the details, I will walk you through one example. So for illustration, I want to dive deeper into one of the objectives, which is to accommodate informal water supply across various sectors. The proposed objective is to improve the knowledge and data on informal water demand and supply in the city, and also to register and record the secondary and the tertiary water sources and supply modes. Doing so can help incorporate the current informality into resilience planning, because there is secondary and tertiary sources and modes of water supply, storage, and treatment support the resilience goals of adding diversity, redundancy, and connectivity in the ways people access water. They already provide an easy and efficient alternative when the formal supply dwindles. However, this current informal nature makes them unaccountable and results in unsustainable groundwater exploitation. Hence, by improving the monitoring of informal water supply, cities can better manage their groundwater resources. And lastly, if the 100% of city population has the access to clean, reliable, and affordable formal water supply, the need for informal system diminishes. This leads me to the end of the theoretical framework. I would like to highlight the usefulness of systems thinking in analyzing the potential for synergy and conflict in resilience and sustainability goals. This approach goes beyond the use of static indicators and allows for designing and modeling the SURE pathways. And at this point, it's a perfect segue for me to move to my second inquiry, because here I extend the systems thinking approach and develop a dynamic model. In the second paper, I focused on how to model the complex interdependencies between water and demand supply across the various urban sectors to evaluate and enhance cities' water security. I used what is called system dynamic modeling. It is a method which puts the systems thinking into action. It is a tool for understanding the change and complexity over time of a dynamic system. So SD models are developed in 5 stages, which includes conceptualization and problem articulation, followed by development of the model and testing it. Thereafter comes building scenarios and evaluating them. And lastly, sharing the insights. Let's understand the modeling process using the case study of Ahmedabad's water supply and demand system. Ahmedabad is a rapidly urbanizing city in the western state of Gujarat. Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation, also called AMC, uses a simple linear water budget for planning. It considers 160 liters per capita per day as the standard to calculate the present and the future water demand. However, water received at the user end is always less than what is supplied. So considering a conservative estimate of 20% water loss, also called NRW, which is highlighted in the yellow line, the effective water received at the user end will be insufficient to meet the demand in 2031. And if we consider a higher NRW of 40%, shown in blue line, then the gap between demand and supply would be even larger. And Ahmedabad city has a NRW which varies between 18 to 44%, depending upon the area. Moreover, the municipal water is supplied only for a couple of hours in the morning. And if you are lucky, then maybe evening too. So what happens is that this leads to all sort of water storage solutions at household levels and decentralized solutions like jerry cans or underground or overhead water storage tanks. And in absence of a 24/7 municipal water supply and often inadequate amount of water received at the user end, most of the residents rely on secondary or tertiary sources for drinking water or for meeting their daily water needs. While the municipal water supply now heavily relies on import of raw surface water, all the other modes rely on groundwater. Additionally, all the unmet needs in the commercial sector and institutions also draw on the groundwater. And Ahmedabad is also a highly industrialized city. And many of these industry rely on groundwater as well. However, none of this informal industrial commercial uses are part of the municipal corporation's water budget. So what it means is that this entire section of water demand and supply goes unaccounted for. It is not measured, not regulated. Therefore, the AMC water budget does not really reflect the reality. It is an incomplete assessment of cities' current and future water needs. So in order to develop a comprehensive water budget for the city using SD modeling, I translated everything that I explained and some more into this causal loop diagram. This is just a visual representation of the causal linkages and mechanisms and feedback loops that I identified as the key to developing a comprehensive model. And that's where the challenge began. The hardest part of this paper was to get reliable quantitative data. So I spent weeks and months in the archives reading through reports, right to information disclosures, local newspapers, made numerous visits to the AMC offices, requested and followed up with the government officials. And in absence of Ahmedabad specific data, I relied on design codes, estimates, and triangulation methods. To recap, I first translated the reality into a logic model, and then with data and mathematical equations, I translated the logic model into a quantitative model. I then tested and validated it, which led me to multiple iterations and improvement until my model was able to replicate the real phenomena. I will show you the outcome of this process in a dashboard towards the end of the presentation. And for now, I will just move to scenario building and a couple of key results. I used the objective from SURE framework as goalpost and the local policies to prioritize the water supply and demand management alternatives. So all the water and supply management strategies, demand and supply management strategies often experience delays in real world. For example, long time delays are associated with large infrastructure projects and policy changes, whereas maximizing the use of existing capacities can be put into use more immediately. So I identified and quantified these time delays and incorporated them into the policy model as well. Next, I designed 3 alternative pathways for testing. So the first pathway was the as-is condition, where the city simply absorbs and copes the water scarcity. In the second pathway, I focused on pragmatic mitigation, which included adoption of some low-hanging fruits and least resistant policies. And lastly, in the third pathway, I focus on long-term mitigation and adaptation. And all these pathways are not exclusive and they just build on one another. The simulation results showed that if the household demand continues to rise at the current pace, it will remain in a very highly unsustainable range of around 340 liters per capita per day. Both price and non-price based demand management policies are needed to bring it down to a more sustainable level and closer to 160 liters benchmark. Moreover, if the water demand is not curtailed and the water sources are not diversified or increased, the municipal supply will only be able to fulfill 40 to 50% of future demand. The deficit remains high enough to result in large levels of groundwater use through informal means, resulting in overexploitation of groundwater. And in the summary of the second paper, I would like to highlight that I used the SURE framework from paper 1 in conceptualization of the model in paper 2, in creating the quantitative model and designing the pathways. The list here on the slide is showing the SURE indicators, which are part of the SD model. And the insights and the data gap identified through the modeling process inform the indicators in the SURE framework. So therefore, the first two papers complemented and informed each other. And now I come to my last paper where I focused on urban water governance dimension. In this research, I asked which formal institutions govern the urban water management in Ahmedabad, and to what extent does their current arrangement support sustainable groundwater use? Also, and if there is a need for a reform to improve their effectiveness. For this, I used social network analysis. From a network perspective, studying water governance involves mapping, describing, and analyzing the formal and informal interactions among the various actors influencing water resource management. I began my research with reviewing the SNA metrics for natural resource management and synthesizing them for urban water governance. I then studied the current institutional arrangement governing water management in Ahmedabad and converting that information into quantitative data. Lastly, I used SNA to analyze the current arrangement and test alternatives. And obviously, due to limited time, I will only share how I approached a predominantly qualitative institutional analysis problem with a quantitative SNA approach and share a few key outcomes. First, I had to define my network boundaries, and I focused on formal institutions only because quantifying informal actors at the city scale was just not feasible. Also, though I do tend to focus only on water in the city, water is a state subject in India, with national level agencies and regional agencies influencing the policy and the interstate water distribution. So a comprehensive analysis of institutions meant that I had to study all the levels of administrative organization. And to identify these formal actors and the connections between them, I first conducted secondary research, generated a list of institutions and a set of questions, and I took them into the field for conducting survey. But within the first couple of interviews, I realized that none of the public officials had the complete knowledge or the time to respond to my questionnaire. So I pivoted and made them into semi-structured interviews. For computational purposes, I categorized each of the institutional actor based on these 7 classifications. I also allocated attributes and weights to their connections. Like, for example, the vertical hierarchy was identified as a strong link and a weight score of 5 was provided, whereas voluntary cooperation is considered a weak link and weighted only 2 in the model. So the SNA results for the city level network showed a marked difference in the network structure of administrative and electoral institutions. The network of electoral representative was predominantly centralized, whereas the network of administrative institutions was more decentralized. Moreover, the linkages between these administrative and elected actors was found to be very weak. The network map also showed presence of an isolated or disconnected component. These industrial estates and their water management mechanism is completely a separate subgroup. And even though groundwater is consumed widely across the city, the SNA results showed that there are no formal institutions at the local level. There is an absence of zonal or ward level institutions mandated to conserve and manage groundwater. Lastly, I tested an alternative institutional arrangement that was based on the shortcomings that emerged from the analysis of the current network and also the reforms that are proposed by the central government. And this proposed institutional arrangement showed that all the disconnected actors in the city can be brought together. There can be an addition of bridging ties between the state and local actors, and it can also provide formal avenues for administrative and electoral actors to meet and potentially engage with the groundwater stakeholders at the local ward level scale. And in conclusion, for social network analysis chapter, what I found is that it was a valuable tool for visually mapping and mathematically analyzing the current and alternate arrangements. But SNA alone cannot fully capture the intricacies of the politics and the power dynamics in Ahmedabad urban water management, and it hence needs to go along with qualitative work, which I did in this paper. And this leads me to the conclusion of my presentation. This dissertation underscores the importance of context-specific application of sustainability and resilience frameworks in rapidly urbanizing cities, such as those in India and the Global South, where especially informal water supply systems coexist with formal ones. And collectively, these papers presented integrated, flexible, and innovative approaches to water planning, management, and governance. The contributions made here not only advance empirical and conceptual understanding in the field, but also offer actionable insights and tools for policymakers. The next step for this research is to improve and expand the modeling and analysis work, and ideally through a participatory and collaborative process. And I also believe that innovations in data collection, particularly for measuring and monitoring informal water systems, can be instrumental in designing pathways that enable cities in India and Global South to leapfrog towards a more sustainable and resilient water management. And I would like to end my presentation with the demonstration of the interactive digital dashboard. This is freely available for everyone to use, and it has been a very popular and well-received outcome of my research. So as you see here, this is the landing page of my digital dashboard. It provides a brief overview, an introduction of what the model is, and it also describes how this dashboard can be used. So this dashboard here shows a set of supply augmentation strategies and demand reduction strategies, and allows user to see the impact of their choices immediately. So if I run this model, it takes a microsecond to calculate the new results, and I can go live to read through the charts and results. I can also just change the policy pathway as here and see immediately the changes that happen in the graph. So, for example, here, yeah, you can see this. Users can also learn what goes behind the simulation, and that is the storyboard for the model. It walks you through the entire process of modeling, what are the key components, and what is the logic and data that went into designing this model. The link I can share in the chat for those who are interested in exploring this. And I can now open this virtual floor for everyone to ask me questions.